In the early morning, when the air is still damp and quiet, a pottery workshop begins to awaken. There is no loud machinery, only the slow sound of footsteps and the faint murmur of running water somewhere in the back. Here, every ceramic piece begins with something that seems utterly ordinary: clay. Blocks of clay are stacked in large lumps in one corner of the workshop. Their surfaces are moist, smooth, and cool to the touch. Not every type of clay is suitable for pottery. Clay that is too brittle will crack. Clay that is too sticky will deform. And clay containing impurities will break when fired at high temperatures. For this reason, selecting clay does not rely on sight, but on the sensitivity of the hands and years of accumulated experience. The potter gently snaps a small piece of dried clay. The sound it makes is very faint, just enough to reveal its brittleness and plasticity. If the clay meets the requirements, it is kept for further processing. From that moment on, the clay is no longer ordinary earth. The clay blocks are placed into large water tanks and soaked for many days. Water slowly penetrates every particle, softening the clay and allowing it to break down naturally. This process cannot be rushed. Time is an indispensable part of pottery making. While soaking, impurities such as small stones, plant roots, or coarse sand gradually separate from the clay. Once the clay has softened sufficiently, the mixture of clay and water is guided through a filtration system. The flow is slow and steady, never hurried. If even a single grain of gravel remains, the finished piece may crack or explode during firing. Therefore, the filtering process is carried out carefully and repeated many times. After filtering, the clay is left undisturbed to settle naturally. No stirring, no movement. The water above gradually becomes clear, while the fine clay settles at the bottom. This is when the clay achieves the uniformity required for the next stages. When the clay has thickened enough, the kneading begins. The clay is placed on a wooden table, and the potter uses hands, feet, and body weight to press, fold, and twist it repeatedly. The purpose is to completely remove any trapped air inside. Air pockets within the clay will cause the piece to explode when exposed to high temperatures. The kneading motion is slow and repetitive. With each press, the clay becomes smoother, more pliable, and more stable. There are no hard spots, no soft spots left behind. Gradually, the clay reaches a state of perfection. Finally, the clay block is left resting on the table. It has no shape yet. It is not a bowl, a plate, or a ceramic vessel. But within that block of clay, every possibility is already present. From this point onward, the clay begins to listen to human hands, ready to enter the next stage of its journey toward becoming pottery. When the clay is ready, the most important journey in the craft of pottery begins. This is the moment when the clay no longer lies still, but starts to move under human hands. The potter's wheel is placed at the center of the workshop. Simple and unadorned, it is nevertheless the tool that determines the form of every piece. The lump of clay is set at the exact center of the wheel, a position that must be perfectly balanced. Even the slightest misalignment can cause the entire form to collapse once the wheel begins to spin. The wheel turns slowly. The clay trembles slightly, then gradually stabilizes. The potter wets their hands and gently places them on the surface of the clay. No forceful pressure, no haste. Every movement must be in harmony with the rhythm of the rotation. The clay begins to change shape. From a formless mass, it is pressed down, pulled upward, opened outward. Each action has a purpose. Each lift of the hand leaves a trace. At this stage, the clay is still very soft. A single small mistake can cause the wall to tilt, the rim to warp, or the entire piece to collapse in an instant. That is why the potter works not only with their hands, but also with sensation and breath. The speed of the wheel, the moisture of the clay, the pressure of the fingertips, all must be controlled at the same time. This is not a struggle between human and material. It is a collaboration. The walls of the vessel gradually rise. The mouth opens. The initial form of a bowl, a plate, or a vase begins to emerge. At this moment, the clay is no longer raw material. It has taken on the first shape of a finished object. When the basic form is complete, the wheel slows and comes to a stop. The piece is still wet, fragile, and easily deformed. The potter uses a thin wire to gently cut the base, separating the piece from the wheel. Every motion is decisive yet delicate. The newly shaped piece is set aside on wooden shelves. There, it is protected from harsh sunlight and strong wind. It needs time to settle into its form. Not every piece is perfect on the first attempt. Some are off-center. Some have walls that are too thin. Some fail to achieve the desired proportions. They are discarded, or remade from the beginning. In pottery, failure is part of the process. There is no haste. No regret. Only patience and precision. As rows of raw pieces are neatly arranged on the shelves, the workshop returns to stillness. The clay has taken shape. But this is only the beginning. Ahead lie many more stages, where time, water, and fire will continue to determine the fate of each ceramic piece. After being shaped, the raw ceramic pieces are removed from the wheel. They are still wet, soft, and extremely fragile. In this state, even the lightest touch can deform the form that took such effort to create. The pieces are placed on wooden shelves, spaced just far enough apart so they do not touch one another. The workshop becomes quieter now. There are no strong movements. No rapid actions. Everything slows down. This is the stage of natural drying. No high heat. No strong airflow. Only air and time. The clay begins to lose moisture little by little. The process is slow and even. If it dries too quickly, the surface will shrink first while the inside remains damp. This imbalance creates tiny cracks, small enough to be unseen, yet enough to ruin the entire piece during firing. For this reason, the potter carefully controls the surrounding environment. Avoiding direct sunlight. Avoiding drafts. Avoiding any sudden changes in temperature or humidity. Each day, the potter walks along the shelves, observing and lightly touching the surfaces. Through experience, they know how dry each piece has become. No measuring tools are needed. Only the sensation at the fingertips. Over time, the color of the clay changes. From dark and damp, it becomes lighter and drier. The surface no longer sticks to the hand, yet it is still not hard enough for further handling. Some larger pieces require many days, even weeks, to reach a stable state. Throughout this period, there is no way to speed up the process without introducing risk. This is the stage that tests patience. There is nothing to fix. Nothing to intervene. Only waiting. When the pieces have dried sufficiently, they become lighter. The sound produced by a gentle tap on the wall changes, deeper and clearer. At this point, the form has been set. The raw ceramic pieces are now firm enough to move on to the next stages. They have passed through one of the quietest yet most crucial phases of the ceramic craft. From soft, easily deformed clay, they have become stable forms, ready to be further refined. Before facing the greatest challenge that lies ahead, when the ceramic pieces have dried and stabilized, they move on to the stage of decoration and glazing. At this point, the form has been set, but the surface remains rough and porous. This is when the clay begins to carry the aesthetic imprint of human hands. The potter holds small brushes and simple tools, implements that have been used for many years. At this stage, the glaze appears dull and pale, far removed from the brilliance of the final result. Everything that will soon be painted onto the ceramic surface relies entirely on experience and imagination. Patterns are created by hand. Each brush stroke is placed slowly and deliberately. There are no two pieces exactly alike. Each object is a unique version, even when made in the same form. Some pieces are decorated simply, emphasizing form and surface. Others carry traditional motifs, repeated across generations. Regardless of style, every detail must take into account how the glaze will react under high temperatures. After decoration, the pieces are glazed. The glaze is dipped, poured, or sprayed evenly over the surface. The coating must be complete, but not too thick. If the glaze is too thin, the surface will be rough and lack sheen. If it is too thick, the glaze will run during firing and distort the piece. At this stage, the glaze has no clear color. It dries to a matte, opaque surface, making the final result almost impossible to predict. The potter can only trust their experience. Once glazed, the pieces are set apart, carefully kept from touching one another. The glazed surface is extremely delicate and easily scratched or chipped. Any contact can undo all the work that came before. This stage allows no room for correction. An extra brush stroke. An uneven layer of glaze. All of it will be revealed when the piece emerges from the kiln. At this moment, the ceramic seems to be waiting. The form is complete. The colors have been chosen. But the final outcome still rests in the hands of fire. When the glaze has completely dried, the ceramic pieces are prepared for the most important stage of the entire process. That stage is kiln firing. The kiln is located at the back of the workshop, separated from the shaping area. The space around the kiln is always dry, hot, and filled with the distinctive smell of earth and fire. Before firing, each piece is inspected one last time. Only those that meet the required standards are placed into the kiln. Loading ceramics into the kiln requires absolute care. The pieces must not touch one another. There must be enough space between them to prevent the glaze from sticking together when it melts at high temperatures. A small mistake in stacking the kiln can ruin dozens of pieces at once. When the kiln door is closed, the firing process begins. The temperature inside the kiln rises gradually. There is no sudden increase in heat. If the temperature rises too quickly, the ceramics can crack or break from within. For many continuous hours, the fire is kept steady. The temperature can reach thousands of degrees Celsius. At this level of heat, the clay and glaze begin to change their structure. The clay hardens like stone. The glaze melts, coating the surface and locking the form of the piece in place. Throughout the firing process, the potter does not leave the kiln. They observe the color of the flame, listen to the sounds inside, and adjust the heat based on experience. Precise measuring devices are not always available. Many decisions are made through intuition and knowledge accumulated over many years. Firing is a stage that cannot be interfered with. Once the kiln reaches high temperatures, it cannot be opened, and nothing can be repaired. At this point, everything is entrusted to the fire. After reaching the required temperature, the kiln is kept hot for a certain period of time. Then the fire is gradually reduced. The cooling process is just as important as the firing itself. If the kiln cools too quickly, the ceramics may suffer thermal shock and crack. When the fire is completely extinguished, the kiln is left untouched for many hours, even days. No one rushes to open it. Patience continues to be the highest priority. Inside the kiln, the ceramic pieces are undergoing their final transformation. Their shape, color, and durability have already been determined. But the final result remains unknown. After many hours, even many days of waiting, the kiln gradually cools down. The temperature inside drops to a safe level. The air around the kiln remains warm, carrying the distinctive scent of earth that has passed through fire. The kiln door is opened slowly. Light pours inside, illuminating the ceramic pieces that have just endured the greatest trial of their journey. This moment is always eagerly anticipated, because no one can be certain of the result until they see it with their own eyes. The ceramic pieces are taken out one by one. There is no rush. They are not stacked. Each piece is carefully examined. The glaze has now completely transformed. From its initial dull appearance, it has become clear, deep, and glossy. Colors emerge that only appear after firing, invisible at any previous stage. When lightly tapped, the ceramic produces a clear, resonant sound. This is a sign that the clay has been fully fired. Pieces that meet the standards have smooth surfaces, even glaze, and stable forms. Alongside them, there are also pieces that do not meet expectations. Some have small cracks. Some glazes have flowed excessively. Some are warped by the heat. These are set aside separately. In ceramics, failure is unavoidable. Not every firing is perfect. But each kiln opening brings new experience. The finished pieces are arranged on wooden tables to cool completely in the natural air. At this point, they are hard enough to be used and durable enough to last a long time. From soft earth at the beginning, through water, through human hands, and through fire, The ceramics have taken their final form. Yet their journey is not over. Under natural light, the ceramic pieces have fully cooled. No trace of heat remains. Only a cool sensation lingers when the hand touches the glazed surface. Each piece carries its own form. No two are ever exactly alike. The marks of the maker's hands are still there, subtle, yet unmistakable. Curves that are not perfectly symmetrical. Slight variations in glaze and color. It is these details that give each piece its character. A ceramic piece is lifted, slowly turned in the hand. Light glides across the surface, reflecting tones that can only be born from fire. Some colors are deep, muted, and still. Others are light, gentle, and open. All are the result of a dialogue between clay, glaze, temperature, and time. When leaving the workshop, ceramics enter everyday life. A bowl on the dining table. A teapot in a quiet morning. A vase by the window, where sunlight passes through each day. Ceramics are not made only to be looked at. They are made to be used. Over time, ceramics record the traces of living. Small scratches. Subtle changes in the glaze's color. These do not diminish their value. On the contrary, they make the pieces more intimate, more full of memory. Within each ceramic piece, there is patience. There are failed attempts. There are firings that do not turn out as hoped. And there are moments of waiting in silence. All of these contribute to the true value of ceramics. Ceramics do not rush. They do not chase absolute perfection. They exist as they are, simple, enduring, and sincere. From an anonymous lump of clay, ceramics become objects present in human life. Quietly, unassumingly, but for a long time. And somewhere, within every ceramic piece, there is always a part of the person who made it. Not something that must be seen, but something that can be felt.